Welcome back, squad. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Full Ride, the college recruiting podcast. I am your recruiting coach and host, Quito Delgado. And I just want to thank you. Right off the bat, I just want to thank you for tuning in because I just checked our downloads and our listens for the month of September. And with 5 days left as of this recording. I'm recording this on Wednesday and I'm releasing it on Thursday. So as of the 25th, with 5 days to go in the month, we have already eclipsed the number of downloads we had last month. And it's the most downloads we've ever had in any one month. In fact, we have increased our downloads now for 3 consecutive months. So really happy. Being the reason why is not from a vanity standpoint. It just means more families are, taking, the initiative to educate themselves on the college recruiting podcast, because this is what this podcast is all about. Full Ride is all about really helping our families, our student athletes, their parents, their guardians, even their coaches and athletic directors or administrators, guidance counselors, anyone in this space. We want to educate them on the process, um, and teach them really how to take control of the college recruiting process from start to finish, right? And we're just getting started, right? This is episode, I believe, 25, 26. So we're just getting warmed up. And every Thursday, we either myself, I host it by myself, with a solo episode. But I've also had the great pleasure of interviewing former professional athletes who played in college, obviously, um, previous college athletes. I call them retired college athletes because once that eligibility is up, it's up. Um, Last week, I interviewed a parent of a current 3-star recruit, so you want to check that one out for sure. And we've even interviewed a high school coach who has had a great deal of success helping his student athletes earn athletic scholarships to college. And it's just really, uh, I have a lot of fun doing this. And based on the feedback that we're getting, not only in the downloads, but also the messages that I receive via email, it just really does feel good that we are, in our own part, making a small difference in the lives of our student athletes who do have that dream of going to the next level. So please keep on tuning in each and every Thursday. Keep sharing that positive feedback, and even provide us with some show suggestions. If you want us to talk about a certain topic one week, we'll definitely do our homework and try to bring value to you on the next episode. And I'm really excited though today. I'm always excited. Right? There's never one episode that I'm more excited than the next. But every single episode I think adds value to our listeners. But I'm particularly excited today because any of you who follow me, my personal life, um, I've also have hosted another podcast in the past. It's called Get on the Box, Tell Your Story. So get on the box, tell your story. And I'm not going to go into, a long, soliloquy about what the podcast is about, but essentially high level here. I interview people everyday people, some people that we can all relate to, who have made a change in their lives. Maybe they wanted to leave a job and start their own business. Maybe they lost a lot of weight. They are activists. Um, some former athletes, some coaches, you name it, people, authors, school, college presidents. So we've really run the gamut of people that I've interviewed for that show. Once again, Get on the Box. Um, and really the goal is to really inspire the listeners to tell their story, to learn the lessons from the guests, and then apply them and take action so that they can go out and tell their stories. So that's the show in a nutshell. And one of the people that I interviewed for that podcast is Brittany Wagner. And for some of you, particularly you Netflix fans, you Last Chance U fans, that name should sound familiar because she starred on that documentary on Netflix, during the first 2 seasons. And for those of you who have never heard of Last Chance U, I encourage you to watch it, especially seasons 1 and 2. But essentially, the series features several college athletes that have had trouble in their lives and struggled with finding structure, if you will. So you have some really talented athletes who maybe got kicked out of a Division I program, or you got high school athletes who didn't qualify, or maybe they got into trouble, and as a result, they lost their scholarships, and as a result, they end up at East Mississippi Community College. And while there, they encounter one of the stars of the show and today's guest, Brittany Wagner. Brittany Wagner is the academic advisor. At the time, she was the academic advisor at East Mississippi Community College. And you can just basically, her role was to try to help mentor these student athletes and to get them back on track. Now, the show was only there for 2 years, but she was the advisor at the school for 8. And during her time there, she helped well over 250 student athletes go on to earn scholarships because she taught them structure. She obviously kept them accountable to their goals. She mentored them, and she was just a really great influence in their lives, and continues to be a mentor in their lives. So while I was interviewing her on Get on the Box, I had to dedicate a small portion of the show to talk about college recruiting. So what I've done for this week is I've edited that podcast episode. I've shortened it only to include when Brittany and I talk about college recruiting. So once the interview starts, that's where it's going to pick up from. Excuse me. And I really need my families to listen to this with some intention, because Brittany, you got to remember, she was always interacting with college coaches, and she knows firsthand what these coaches are looking at in student athletes. She knows the questions that they ask, and it blew my mind some of the questions that they would ask her. And I think once you hear these questions, you're going to really, especially you student athletes, you're going to think twice about doing some of the knucklehead things you guys may be participating in doing today. Let me say that again. You may change your mind, or you may think twice about some of the silly things you guys are doing today. I hope it gives you pause when you listen to what she says. She also talks about what makes the best of the best athletes, what makes them the best of the best from a mindset point of view. She talks about time management. We just cover a lot of ground on this topic in a short period of time. So I really hope you find it helpful, and it really empowers you on your college recruiting journey. And as always, I encourage you, once you listen, head on over to our website. Now, I'll be honest, it's a work in progress because, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always changing stuff, but there's a lot of great information there, including today's show notes. So head on over to our website at the end of the show. It's yourecruityou.com. Yourecruityou.com. And just remember, we don't spell out the word you at all. It's just a letter U at the beginning and at the end. So yeah, do that, and then just do yourecruityou.com/podcast, and there you're going to find this week's episode, but then all of our previous episodes as well. So again, if you are a first-time listener, you can binge listen to all the episodes that came before this week's. But I've rambled long enough. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and just encourage you to make sure, if you find value in it, be a good teammate. Lend a hand, give an assist, and make sure you share this on social media so that we can get more families to join our squad. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, I don't think athletes understand the recruiting process. They only see it from one side, and I think it's beneficial for them to understand both sides of it. And when a coach is coming in to recruit you, chances are 9 times out of 10, they've seen your film. So they're not coming in necessarily to ask about your playing ability. They already know you can play, or they wouldn't be there, especially Power 5 schools. I mean, Nick Saban isn't going to waste a trip to a school to talk to a kid that he doesn't know if he can play or not. He already knows he can play. He's already been evaluated probably multiple times with his athletic ability. So at the point that coaches are coming into a school and talking to someone like me, they're past your athletic ability. And now they're on to stage 2 of that recruiting process, which is your character, your work ethic, your academic situation. And you will make or break yourself in that stage of recruiting. Because here's the thing, coaches are not going to risk their paycheck on you if you can't do what you're supposed to do. They're getting paid too much money and they have families that they have to support. They are not going to continually sign a kid that isn't holding up their end of the bargain. And so they want to know on the front end what they're getting. And that is why they talk to teachers, counselors, other people other than coaches about players. And I would get asked, obviously, that we would look at transcripts together. We would look at, their academic situation and how close or how far they were away from eligibility, what the likelihood of them being eligible in the timeline that the coach wanted them to be eligible was. A lot of our players, coaches we wanted to have mid-year transfers. So we would want to graduate players rather than 2 years. It's really beneficial for junior college players to try to graduate in a year and a half football so that they can report for spring training at the Division I institution. So we really worked hard to get guys out in December, and that was crucial to these Power 5 coaches. Are they going to get out in December? Can they report to us for spring training? Because when you have a spring and then a summer, you're more likely to play in the fall if you've already learned the playbook, learned the processes of the coaches, and gelled with your teammates. So that was huge for our coaches to see that timeline. When are they going to get out? What is their GPA? I would get asked all the time, can they do college level work? Because sometimes a transcript is not indicative of, their ability to do college level work. I mean, sometimes, you're getting passed along. And so, he made an A in this class, but I mean, is he going to be able to maintain this status at this next university? Or is this maybe not? Are these C's and D's maybe because of different circumstances that happened during that semester, and when and those circumstances have fixed themselves, and so I always got asked, can he do college level work? I always got asked about work ethic. Does he go to class? Is he on time? Does he show up? Do you have to call him every day and wake him up? I mean, how much of a headache is he for you? Or does he do what he's supposed to do with minimal effort on your part? That was always a question. One of the most powerful questions I ever got when talking to a coach was, and I got asked this several times, but would you sign him? If your paycheck was on the line, would you sign him? Would you want him to play for you? And that's a hard question to answer, but I was always honest in those situations because I understand the value of that paycheck, and I understand that in athletics, these players staying the course and putting forth effort and performing on and off the field for these coaches is their livelihood. And so I was always honest in that situation. I would also be asked, a lot of on the scale of 1 to 10. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you place him, his character? On a scale of 1 to 10, a leader. Is he a leader? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much does he gel with his teammates? Have you ever seen him lash out at a teacher or a support staff member or a coach? Is he respectful to you? Those types of questions I would get asked a lot.
That's awesome. That's just some great, that was really good because these are things because the athletes need to hear this stuff. The parents need to understand this stuff because, a big thing I said this, many times, but I heard it and I just love the quote is your reputation shows up before you do. So these coaches are coming into, whether they're doing a school visit, like Brittany said, a coach, I don't care what level, they're not going to your school to watch you practice to determine if you can play. They already know if you can play and contribute. They're now, doing the fact checks and they want to really dig in. So you need to make sure that you are treating everybody in the building with respect, your teachers, your guidance counselors, the coaches, your your classmates, because coaches will just stop by and they'll ask people while they're in the hallway, about you. So that's just great
Yeah.
advice. But then two, this is the business part of it. Because again, in high school, you have your coach, and a lot of them have their other full-time jobs. They're really not making a whole lot, unless you're talking about one of these, big time high school programs. But for the most part, high school coaches, it's a side job for them. It's not, that's not how they're feeding their families. It's not their livelihood. But with college coach, I love that question that you were asked, is like, would you, they're feeding their families. So
Yeah.
they want to know, like, would you put your paycheck on the line? And again, that's something
Right.
that you
Right.
athletes got to understand, that, coaches, they get judged too by their head coaches
Yep.
a lot of times.
And
So
and they don't want someone that's going to be constantly in the media for the wrong things. No program wants that. They don't, social media is huge. I had a coach ask me one time, I've gone through his social media and he seems to always tweet at 2 a.m. What's that about? Is he, and I think that's important. It's nitpicky, and I don't know that, athletes think about it, but I think not only what you put out on social media, but the times that you're putting it out are important. Are you in the locker room before a game tweeting something? Because if you are, college coaches don't, that is not impressive to a college coach.
Not focused.
To know that right before a game, you're not focused on the game. You're more interested in how many likes you get, on social media. So I think, those things are important as well. It's putting your phone down, and showing that you're disciplined and focused, not only, in your physical state, wherever you are, but also on social media as well.
That's great. And again, talking with Brittany Wagner. And so I want to ask real quick, and then we'll move on a little bit. But again, because I want to definitely serve our families with student athletes in general. So obviously you worked, a lot of students, they always think that, I'm just going to go to college out of high school. But, one thing clearly, obviously, junior college is definitely an option. Now, I believe that a lot of families, junior college has a negative stigma to it, but I actually think it's a great opportunity for you to go, strengthen your grades, work on your craft, and get that support, get used to college life before, you go and play, Division II, Division I athletics. So can you just talk about, if there's the family that, maybe they're under the radar and now they decide they want to go to junior college for a year or two, what should they look for in a junior college, and because obviously not all junior colleges are the same. So what do you think they should be looking for in a junior college if they really are serious about trying to eventually play at the, NCAA level?
I think that the opportunity for you to be successful is important. And at a junior college, if you're taking that route, then and you want to play Division I or Division II, you want to play at the next level, then you have to get recruited. You have to get looked at. And so I don't necessarily think you have to be at a winning program. I think you can be you don't have to be at an East Mississippi. You don't have to be somewhere where they're winning a national championship every year, but you've got to be somewhere that you're going to get noticed, you're going to get seen, because you can go to a junior college but if you don't get recruited out of there, then you're done. You're in the same boat you were maybe in high school with not getting the offer. So I think going to a program that has at least had players before you go somewhere, look back at their track record. How many players have they sent to the next level at that school? Who's their coach? And even if they're not necessarily winning championships or ranked in the top, 5 or 10 in the country, are they competitive? Is their coach somebody that is marketing their players, putting their players out there and getting players to the next level? Part of that is academics. Now, the sad part of that is that there's not very many academic counselors in the junior college world. I was the only one in the state of Mississippi at the time. There's just not very many schools that have that position. So I think it's important that if you go to a junior college, the athlete or their families understand junior college eligibility and what you have to do to get to Division I, because the chances of you having someone there who knows those rules are slim to none. Somewhere where you can thrive. For for a lot of our guys, they would drive up in Scuba and think, oh my gosh, I can't live here because it's in the middle of nowhere. But what actually would happen is that's where they would thrive because there was nothing else to do. It was in the middle of nowhere and there was nothing else to do. So it was literally books and ball. And for a lot of our guys, that was good. I mean, that's what they needed. They needed to be away from, wherever they had come from, or from maybe that big city kind of college town atmosphere, because this was it for them. This was their last chance, and they needed to really be focused. And a place like Scuba gave them that opportunity. So I think you have to know yourself. If you know yourself, and are you going to be able to be successful if you go to a junior college in, New York City, or do you need to be in a place like Kansas or Mississippi where there's kind of nothing? I think that's important, because I think it's important to understand that when you go to a junior college, this is it. I mean, you have to play well, you have to perform well off the field, and you have to get recruited. And if you don't, then your career ends there. So I think for everybody, it really can kind of be your last chance at the sport if you don't handle your business.
I love that answer. And one question, because you were surrounded by so many now, I mean, there are, you had some really top athletes that you would tutor and continue to, quite frankly, that you would tutor, be a mentor, and quote unquote, be, in your words, be a mother to. So you were around, to some really talented individuals on a day-to-day basis. Can you just talk to this in general, and for athletes that are listening, the high achieving athletes, what about them, made them successful, at either at the junior college level, but then as they went on, was there any particular trait that you kind of noticed that like really set them apart from all the other student athletes that maybe got there, but they didn't fulfill their potential, and unfortunately, their careers did end at the junior college level?
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I look back now, I don't know if in the moment, if I really put it all together and realized it, but I look back now, I have 12 players playing in the NFL. All 12 of them earned a college degree before getting drafted. And I look at them and I'm like, okay, what qualities do they have that maybe some of these other guys that didn't make it maybe didn't have? And I think the interesting thing is all 12 of those guys and the other guys that I have right now playing Division I football, all of them broke at some moment. There was some moment where they kind of gave in. They kind of surrendered, and I think sometimes big time athletes, when they're the guy at their high school and everybody's, touting on them, and everybody around them is kind of a yes man, and they're just the guy. They've never really been tested, and there's this ego and there's this pride thing, and there's this, I like to call it Billy Badass, there's this Billy Badass attitude that they walk around with. And I think at some point, those guys that were successful, at some point they broke that. They kind of let go of all of that, and they realized that doesn't last forever, and a lot of it isn't real. A lot of them, they had that moment where they kind of gave in and said, "Look, I need help," or "I don't know how to do this," or "I can't do this on my own," or "I'm stressed out." They all kind of had that moment where they admitted that the fear, or they admitted that they needed help, or they admitted, that they were afraid, that they were scared, or that they maybe weren't as confident as they were putting out. And I think that's interesting, that moment happened in all 12 of those guys. And in most of them, I can remember the exact moment. I think also for them, every single one of them worked. I think there's this attitude nowadays of like, well, I want to play in the NFL, but you don't do anything to get yourself there. It's like you just say it, and so it's supposed to happen. And these guys, the guys that I've seen that have been successful, I mean, they worked. Decisions that they made, every decision that they made, was in alignment with that goal. They didn't take it lightly. It wasn't something that they just thought was going to happen to them. It was something that they manifested in their life by their work ethic and by the decisions that they made. And I think that's that's key for young athletes is, I mean, there are failures, there are failures, and there are attitudes and habits that successful people have. I can think of Danico Autry. Danico Autry plays for the Indianapolis Colts. He this is his first year with the Colts. He played for the Raiders before that, but he was one of my guys, and he wasn't even recruited out of high school. He had no offers out of high school. We recruited him and signed him off of the size of his hands alone.
Wow.
And now look at him, I mean, and he has made this life for himself through his work ethic, through that failure alone of coming out of high school and not being a recruited kid. Most kids would stop right there. Well, I'm not recruited. Now I have this pity party thing. Now I'm in Scuba, Mississippi, and woe is me. I have this, I'll never be anything attitude. And Danico, he worked, he saw the fact that one school wanted him and one school signed him as one opportunity, and he made the most of it. And he ended up being an SEC defensive lineman, and now he's playing in the NFL. And I think that was because he saw the opportunity and he took it. And I think all people that are successful have those stories of failure. They have those stories where things didn't go the way they wanted them to go, but they overcame that situation. And there's going to be quittable moments in all of our lives. And I think the key to the difference and the key to being successful is overcoming those quittable moments, and not quitting and seeing it as an opportunity rather than a failure.
That's awesome. And quittable moments, I like that term, and really not giving into those quittable moments. And you also just talked about it, the term I like to use is control the controllable, right? So, the athlete you just mentioned in the NFL, Danico, you said, right?
Uh-huh.
Yep. So many people, like you said, he could have gone there and said, forget this, or he could have actually turned down the opportunity to play junior college, say, I'm too good for this. I'm not going to do that. But he went there with the right attitude, took care of his business. And because, I always say, stay in the game as long as possible. You never know what can come out of it. So, he went to junior college. I mean, that's just a great lesson for our families and our athletes. It's like, just stay in the game as long as you can, because you can get to college, get a growth spurt. You can put on 30 pounds. You never know what can happen. You want to do everything possible to prolong your career. And if it ends up being in the pros, great. But if nothing else, if you earn a scholarship, you graduate from school, debt free, you have you grow your network and you do things the right way. I think that's a great message that you just shared. And this last year on recruiting, and then we'll move on, because you're also we know there are a lot of single moms out there. I feel like they can definitely learn a lot from how your work-life balance and how you juggle being a mom first and foremost, but then also being an entrepreneur. But real quick, can you talk to our I always like to say, give our student athletes a winning player or their family. So let's say someone's in high school right now and they have dreams of playing, forget pros. This is right now they want to earn the athletic scholarship to college. What's something today, a winning play, if you will, that they can really focus on and they can do together as a family that can help them, get closer to that next step?
I think time management. I think for a lot of athletes, high school athletes, and then I've seen it time and time again transitioning into that freshman year, there's no time management skills. We've just kind of, I don't know, hodgepodge through like chaos, and then you get to college and it's a different deal. And I've seen it go both ways, where in high school, mom did everything, or mom and dad did everything. So they woke you up. They told you when to eat. They told you when to go to bed. They told you when to do your homework or where you needed to be and when you needed to be there. And mom and dad kind of managed your life. And then you get to college and mom and dad aren't there to manage it and you fall apart. I've seen it go that way, and I've seen it go the opposite way, where no one was managing your life, and you were doing whatever, and you were able to get by in high school without managing your time. and staying up all night and kind of doing whatever you wanted to do when you wanted to do it. And then you get to college and you're an athlete and you can't do that anymore. And you don't even know how, you don't even know how to start structuring and having discipline in your life and time management skills. So I think that's really important for both sides, for mom and dad to start saying, okay, you plan out your day. You write it down. You keep a calendar to figure out a way to balance it where you're teaching your kid responsibility and how to manage their own day, and how to manage their own time, and you're kind of guiding them through that process, but letting them do it themselves. I did this with my child this week. She came home from school and I said, "Do you have any homework?" And she said, "Yes." And then she started going through her folder and she had a worksheet that she did not bring home. And so she obviously couldn't do the homework. She didn't have the worksheet. And rather than disciplining her and getting all, I just looked at her and said, "Well, that's your grade. So you will get a 0 because you didn't bring the worksheet home." And then I said to her, "Okay, so from this point forward, what do you need to do to be responsible and make sure that you bring all of the things you need to bring home? You figure it out." Because the system that you're using right now, just trying to remember, isn't working. So we have to find a new system. So what do you need to do to make sure? And she said, "I need to get a little bitty notepad. And when my teacher tells me I have homework, I need to write it in that notepad. And then at the end of the day, when I'm going to get my backpack ready to come home, I need to look at the notepad and make sure I have everything that I need to do my homework in my backpack." I said, "Perfect. Then that's what you're going to do from here on out." But if I had said to her, "Okay, make sure from here on out, because you didn't do your homework, you're going to bring everything in your locker home every night." Well, that's not teaching her how to be responsible, because now she's going to bring all of it home and I'm going to go through all of it and find, what she's supposed to do. And that's not my responsibility. That's her responsibility. So I want to teach her, how do you figure it out? How are you responsible for doing your own homework? And I think that's important to help guide your child in making those decisions and figuring those things out on their own, rather than controlling it for them.
All right, squad. Coach Keto again. I really hope you found this special episode with Last Chance U's Brittany Wagner helpful. She really shared some gems throughout that whole interview, and I really hope you found value in it. Recruits, please, student athletes, listen to her, take her advice, take all the advice, but if nothing else, really pay attention to 2 things about social media. Be very mindful not only about what you post, how often you post, but when you post, because coaches are paying attention to that. They pay attention to every little detail. They scrutinize everything. And lastly, never, ever, ever lose sight of the fact that coaches are going after, yes, they want you to be talented. Yes, they want you to be academic, eligible to play. But above all else, they want to recruit high character student athletes. At the end of the day, they are not going to offer you a scholarship. They are not going to put their paycheck on the line on your behalf if you lack character. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I encourage you and invite you to tune in next Thursday for a new one. But until then, this is your college recruiting coach, Quito Delgado, reminding you that college recruiting starts with you. What steps are you taking today to earn an athletic scholarship tomorrow?